This is question number 13 from the June 2015 Geometry Regents exam. This question is all about remembering how to prove whether or not a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Now, there are a few different ways to tell if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. One of them is if the diagonals bisect each other, meaning if the distance from A to the center is equal to the distance from the center to C, and from B to the center and D to the center are also the same. So they're bisecting diagonal lines. So that's option number one. So that would be enough to prove that it's a parallelogram. Another way to show that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram is to prove that both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. So if we could show that BC is congruent, let's use a highlighter, BC is congruent to AD, and also show that AB and CD are congruent, that would prove that this is a parallelogram. And that's option number 2, that AB and CD are congruent and BC and AD are congruent. Another way to prove something is a parallelogram is to show that one pair of opposite sides is both congruent and parallel. And we see that happening in option number 3. This says that AB is congruent to CD, and AB is also parallel to CD. That's enough to prove that this is a parallelogram. So in the end, it is option number 4 as being not sufficient proof to prove that this is a parallelogram. And this one is saying that AB and CD are congruent, but the other opposite sides are parallel, right? And that's not enough to prove that you're dealing with a parallelogram. A visual example would be a trapezoid, like this. So this is AB and CD. So you can see that it's possible for those to be congruent, the same length, these two lines. And BC and AD are parallel. So it does fit that description, but clearly this is not a parallelogram, right? So yeah, hope that makes sense. And that's it for this video. Thanks for visiting JD's Regents Preparation.